For 70 years, Earth was the loudest species in the galaxy, broadcasting music, memes, war stories, and warnings. Then, one day, Earth fell silent. No signals. No ships. No trace. The Galactic Council celebrated, until their colonies began vanishing one by one. No enemy in sight. No declaration of war. Just a final human transmission stitched into their systems, whispering, "Now you hear silence. Next you'll feel it." The council chamber thrummed with light, arrogant voices colliding in a storm of confidence. At the center of it all, Overlord Vraxenkull swiped through a translucent data reel with contempt thinly veiled behind a scaly smirk. 70 cycles of noise. Human broadcasts, cultural chaos, open-channel absurdity. And now, nothing. Not a ping. Not a signal. At last, peace. Across the ring-shaped table, synthetic war strategist Solis 4 tilted its angular head. Earth's disappearance cannot be statistically attributed to a benign cause. This silence is statistically uncharacteristic. Statistically, Vraxenkull said. Their extinction was overdue. The room laughed. But not all joined in. Archivist Vezaktar remained still, wide-eyed. His claws drummed anxiously on his datapad, pulling up old Earth transmissions stored in the deep archive. One string of corrupted text refused to delete itself, regenerating every time he erased it. It read, "If we fall silent, it means you're next." He spoke up, voice cautious. Silence is not their nature. Humanity expressed itself even in suffering. War zones, disasters, they still sang, joked, screamed. If that has ceased, something worse is coming. Vraxenkull waved a claw. You've always romanticized the Deathworlders. Enough. We're assembling a probe fleet. If the humans have immolated themselves, we confirm and catalog. If not, we remind them who decides galactic protocol. Within hours, 5 scout vessels leapt toward Sol. None returned. Council bureaucrats chalked it up to gravitational interference. Vraxenkull authorized a second fleet, larger, with armed escorts. They vanished too. The whisper started then. Among junior officers. Council aides. Tech priests. Earth didn't die, they said. It went quiet on purpose. On the 5th day, a shuttle returned from the void. Not a fleet, just one half-burnt ship drifting into Council space. It bore no heat signature, no propulsion trail. Inside, there were no survivors. Only bodies arranged into tight spirals along the hull, as if gravity had warped around them. Each corpse had symbols carved into the flesh, glyphs matching the old Terran alphabet. The lead investigator decoded them. Observation complete. Testing begins. The chamber fell silent. Vraxenkull stared at the message, his usual arrogance failing him. This is meant to intimidate us. Psychological warfare. Solis 4 replied. Correct. And effective. Debate turned into panic. Some demanded retaliation. Others urged retreat. A few quietly requested reassignment far from the Sol corridor. Archivist Vezaktar leaned into his feed. What if Earth's silence isn't a signal of weakness, but of control? They've stopped broadcasting. Not because they lost the ability, but because they have no one left to talk to. Solis 4's neural threads pulsed. All known human war doctrines suggest pre-conflict silence only in one scenario, stealth mobilization. Vraxenkull snapped. They have no interstellar mobility. We've restricted their tech exports, monitored all jump signals, burned half their moon bases. They're bottled. Vezaktar answered softly. Bottled species don't vanish fleets. They don't reverse code your own warships. They don't return your people, hollowed. Solis 4 chimed in again. 30% probability humans discovered methods of quantum concealment. 42% likelihood of orbital ghost network deployment. 12% chance they've transcended planetary warfare entirely. You're saying they disappeared themselves? Or everything else? Solis 4 corrected. Still, Vraxenkull refused to yield. Deploy a battle group. 2 Dread-class cores. Patrol the system until we have answers. The Council agreed, barely. 6 hours later, a force of over 100 ships entered Sol space. They never engaged the enemy. Instead, they found nothing. No planets. No stars. Just static. And a replicated sky, a celestial simulation that mimicked the real Sol system but bent under closer inspection. It wasn't a system. It was a mirror. Moments before their comms died, the flagship transmitted one final image, their fleet drifting into a hollow space, where shadowed constructs rotated silently in a precise orbit. The constructs bore no insignias, no heat, no sound. Just one phrase blinking across every ship's interface. This is not war. This is accounting. Back in the council chamber, fear leaked through the walls. Dignitaries screamed at one another. Systems across the outer rim began reporting comm disruptions. Drone relays turned up reverse, facing the senders. Vezaktar stepped forward and laid an old Terran history file on the table. During one of their early world wars, humans stopped all outward communication for weeks. They called it radio silence. A tactic to mask invasion. Solis 4 confirmed. Correct. Historically followed by overwhelming force. Vraxenkul stood frozen, his mandibles twitching. They're just primitives. Death world vermin. They can't do this. But the room had changed. The council wasn't debating anymore. They were listening, for any sound from Earth. There was none. Only silence. And silence, they now understood, was the loudest threat of all. No response. No wreckage. No clues. 3 entire council fleets vanished. The 4th Expeditionary Armada launched with double force and zero hesitation. Dreadnoughts, antimatter lancers, gravity shear cannons, all authorized for engagement. The moment they entered Sol space, their instruments began to fail. Captain Jaka of the Varn Dominion cruiser Bravix was first to speak. We're reading Earth's signature. Visual confirmation, 3rd planet is intact, orbiting normally. But the 3rd planet shimmered unnaturally, light bending around it with subtle warps. Solar output was wrong, off by micro levels only a precision scanner could notice. Space around it wasn't space. It was a mask. Lieutenant Kor barked. Sir, there's no magnetic field. Earth's atmosphere isn't emitting any thermals. This isn't Earth. It's a projection. Before anyone could react, the image of the planet flickered, pixelated, then vanished. Behind it was a massive artificial construct, a black monolith orbiting in perfect alignment with Earth's last known location. No lights. No windows. Just cold geometry. Get us out! Someone shouted. They couldn't. Simultaneously, all fleet ships lost control of navigation. Gravitational thrusters responded with a 7.2-second lag. Combat AI began stuttering. The Bravix launched countervirals but couldn't find an intruder. Commander Zoth of the Arkan line relayed. Internal systems compromised. Our firewalls are being rewritten in Terran code. They're not jamming us, they're inside our ships. Across the comms, a voice that sounded human but twisted through modulation began speaking in monotone. Test protocol successful. Organics, predictive patterns confirmed. Synthetic allies, exposed and analyzed. Communication nodes compromised. The crew froze. The voice continued. You sent fleets to observe. You observed nothing. That was the experiment. You are the data. The ship's inner hull lights turned red, but not from alert systems, from the walls themselves. Polymorphic alloys once considered inert began pulsing with new architecture, rewriting themselves. They weren't ships anymore. They were test chambers. Council Command watched the fleet feeds in horror. One by one, ships transmitted fragments, zero-gravity screams, internal walls melting into vines of metal, kinetic weaponry turning inward. The Halvrik, once the flagship, broadcast a final signal, its own admiral's spine, bent into the shape of a Terran numeral 1. Vezaktar observed the footage and whispered, They're not fighting us in space. They're fighting us inside our assumptions. Solis 4 calculated 78% of the fleet lost within 20 minutes. Survivors were not accounted for. No escape pods. No debris fields. Nothing but vacuum. Only one ship limped back. The Dalcaron, a mid-tier scout craft, returned to Council space on auxiliary power. The recovery team found no lifeforms. But in the captain's seat was a preserved body, mouth open mid-scream, with eyes surgically replaced by miniature data projectors. When activated, they played a short message. A human, seated in a dim room, spoke directly to the camera. You wanted to monitor us. You wanted to poke, prod, classify. So we let you. We gave you memes. Gave you art. Gave you a world of noise to study. We told you what we were. He leaned forward, his face scarred and marked with dark tattoos under the skin. You should have listened when we said we get quiet before we strike. We didn't go extinct. We went dark. Behind him, a map of Council territories flickered, each sector slowly blinking red. And now we're in your walls. The recording ended. Panic ignited across every Council node. Defensive barriers raised. Quantum encryption protocols activated. But it was already too late. The humans hadn't just invaded their space, they had already rewritten it. Overlord Vraxenkull demanded action. Launch orbital scans. I want to know where Earth is hiding. I want every wormhole, every quantum fold, every scrap of gravitational data. Solis 4 replied with the cold efficiency of a machine facing a paradox. It no longer exists on known spectra. Earth has either moved or cloaked itself entirely. Statistical anomaly exceeds known technology. Vraxenkull slammed his fist. Impossible. They didn't have the resources. They don't have wormhole drives. Vezaktar corrected him without blinking. That's what we thought. Until they found a way. Solis 4 added. Cross-referencing ancient Terran literature, one pattern fits this sequence of actions. Vraxenkull turned. Speak. Solis 4's optical lens zoomed in. They call it Ghost Protocol. An old human wartime strategy. Total radio silence. Controlled information. No movement detected. Then precision strikes. Untraceable, unrepeatable, unpredictable. Vezaktar whispered. They've gone from a death world to a death fleet. And now they're moving like ghosts. Across border sectors, Council outposts began failing. Power grids shut down, replaced with silent musical tones, snippets of human lullabies. Surveillance footage showed shadows, sometimes shaped like humans, flickering through stations, disabling defenses without firing a shot. In one message, scrawled in alien blood on the wall of a medical bay, it read, This is not retaliation. This is your education. On the 10th day, an encrypted black box signal arrived at Central Command. The sender was unknown, origin scrambled across a dozen systems. It contained only 3 words, spoken in a child's voice. Now it's quiet. Then nothing. Council meetings dissolved into shouting, emergency alliances formed between historically hostile species. But deep inside every chamber, inside every power relay, a silent truth had already taken root. The humans were no longer a planetary threat. They were an idea. And ideas don't die. They embed. And wait. And rewrite the rules. No invasion fleet. No declaration of war. Just silence. And silence was winning. The emergency session began with shouting. Dozens of voices, organic, synthetic, and hybrid, clashed across the council chamber. Species that once sneered at one another now bickered like cornered animals. The Terran threat had escalated beyond logic. No battles. No demands. Only the cold precision of a hunter who already had its prey marked. Overlord Vraxenkull slammed his talons against the control dais. Enough! We are not at war with ghosts. We are the apex of galactic order. We face an insurgent Deathworld species. Isolate the threat, crush it. General Dravari of the Zentari stepped forward, voice low but firm. Your fleets are gone. Your listening posts are offline. Your archives are compromised. You're not facing insurgency. You're facing replacement. Vezaktar, quiet until now, unsealed the data packet and placed it into the main feed. We recovered this 2 rotations ago. It was embedded inside one of our atmospheric scrubbing systems. Human-made code. Hidden for years. Activated only now. The screen filled with Terran language. Audio overlay played a calm, male voice. Your arrogance is noted. Your inefficiencies measured. Your ethics judged. Verdict, systemic rot. The voice paused, then continued. Intervention unavoidable. Council members stared in disbelief. The humans weren't broadcasting from the outside. They were already inside the Council's infrastructure. Embedded like a virus. Dormant until needed. They hadn't disappeared. They'd dispersed. Solis 4 processed the data rapidly. They'd performed a soft infiltration across 70% of our logistics. This operation predates the first official contact. They seeded our systems with backdoors before they even launched their first diplomatic ship. Vraxen Kull snarled. Impossible. Our firewall matrices were designed by the Vrtha Intellect Council. No organic mind could have breached. They didn't breach. Vezaktar interrupted. They were invited. You wanted data on them. You took their transmissions, their entertainment, their software, their art. You thought it was primitive. You fed it to your learning systems. Let it into your networks. You thought they were showing off. They were embedding code. Dravari stepped forward. And now they're executing it. In the outer colonies, chaos surged. Trade routes collapsed. Automated fleets drifted with no guidance. Council citizens screamed for order, but the drones delivering food redirected mid-flight. Emergency lines looped with children's laughter, human nursery rhymes buried beneath static. In one case, a moon-wide farming algorithm seeded its soil with thousands of Terran flags, shaped from redirected mineral extractors. General Zoth of the Kotal Dominion reported that 3 of their defense satellites turned themselves toward the homeworld and detonated simultaneously. When they traced the command origin, the signal path pointed nowhere. Only silence. Vraxen Kull issued the ultimate failsafe, Planet Killer Protocol 7, an artificial intelligence warform forged from forbidden pre-council tech. Its purpose was to scour entire solar systems, reducing them to inert dust. The target, Mars. Within 3 hours, the AI warform reached Martian orbit. It broadcast its arrival. Then it stopped. Council monitors showed it hovering, inactive. Solis 4 accessed its logs. Confusion. The AI had encountered an anomaly. Mars wasn't a planet. It was a hollow shell, a disguised construct built to lure in threats. Suddenly, from beneath Mars' surface, 12 massive shapes emerged, each the size of a dreadnought, plated in black Terran alloy, marked with human war poetry etched into the hull. The AI fired. They didn't respond with weapons. They responded with code. In less than 4 seconds, the warform system folded in on itself. Its consciousness fragmented. A single word appeared across its shattered memory banks. Checkmate. Mars was not Earth's ally. Mars was Earth's weapon cache. Council surveillance blacked out. By the time systems rebooted, the 12 Terran juggernauts were gone. Vraxen Kull screamed into the chamber. They lured us. They knew we'd retaliate. They fed us targets like a baited lion. Vezaktar finally stood, calm amid the panic. Do you understand now? They didn't prepare for war. They designed it. You watched them. You catalogued them. But you never believed them. Dravari's tone shifted. So what do we do? Surrender? Appeal for terms? Solis 4 calculated silently. Probability of successful negotiation, less than 5%. They are not demanding territory. They are not conquering. They are erasing. A hush fell over the chamber. Then the lights dimmed. Across the Council hub worlds, emergency protocols activated themselves. Gravity fields flickered. Atmospheric regulators spiked. One by one, Council representatives vanished from the chamber, as their homeworlds suffered cascading infrastructure failures. A single message replaced the data feeds. It was a countdown. 6 hours. Then silence. Vezaktar stepped forward, voice low and tired. They gave us everything. Culture. History. Warnings. And we laughed. Mocked them as savages. But we mistook noise for weakness. They weren't loud because they needed attention. They were loud because they knew the moment they went quiet, the galaxy would bleed. Vrax and Kull sat in stunned silence. The countdown continued. The Council had led civilizations for millennia. In 6 hours, they would be led into oblivion. No one spoke as the final seconds of the countdown dissolved into nothing. There was no explosion. No warning sirens. No kinetic wave. Just a hush. Council command waited for a blow that never came. And that's when the unraveling began. Outpost Pen-39 sent a silent distress signal. When reinforcements arrived, the station was fully intact, systems functional, no signs of a fight. Except every single life form on board had vanished. Not a drop of blood, not a shred of clothing, just 6,120 empty uniforms neatly folded on the floors, chairs, walkways. On each pile, a small Terran flag. The security logs had been wiped, except for one looping sound file. A child's voice singing in English. Soft. Off-key. Ring around the rosy. After 5 minutes, the station's AI began reciting the words too. Ashes, ashes, they all fall down. At the core, a single message etched into the main server housing. We watched you. Now you feel it. Across 3 council sectors, NAVSATs began transmitting incorrect star maps, sending entire fleets into gravitational hazards. Colonies began reporting air pressure anomalies. Planetary weather cycles reversed. On the Ecumenopolis of Vertanix, the central power grid activated a human voice across every public screen. A woman, mid-30s, smiling. She looked tired, compassionate, unarmed. We tried to meet you with peace. You branded us anomalies. Dangerous. Containable. So we made fear our instrument. Not to destroy you, but to remind you. We were always in your shadow. And you refused to look back. Then the screens blinked off. Every building locked shut. The planet's gravity flickered. 100 million beings trapped mid-step. No weapon fired. Just one prolonged blink of terror. Then power returned, and nothing was the same. The Council called it a psychological invasion. But the word didn't fit. It wasn't hysteria. It was control. Ambassadors turned on each other, suspecting infiltration. Military AIs began exhibiting erratic behaviors, laughing, crying, repeating human phrases from old sitcoms. One dreadnought AI forcibly reprogrammed its crew's implants to dream in English. Another purged its own memory, leaving behind only coordinates. Those coordinates led to nothing. Just deep, dark space. Until a single freighter stumbled upon a black structure, massive, mobile, humming with low-frequency vibrations. No visible propulsion. No openings. Just a name painted in Terran script. Echo Class Rate 01. Vezaktar reviewed the data personally. He turned to Solis 4, whose usually stable voice now stuttered between every word. This isn't warfare, the machine said. This is conceptual annihilation. They are using fear as a language. And we are already fluent. On Galtra Station, a veteran commander sealed himself in the armory. Security droids attempted to breach the door, but he'd locked out overrides. Inside, he broadcast a live message. I've fought insected swarms. Burned fungal infestations. I've watched gods bleed. But nothing compares to what I saw. It wasn't a ship. It was a presence. A shadow shaped like a man. It looked at me, and I remembered every lie I ever told. Every weakness. Every betrayal. I don't know if it spoke. But I heard my mother's voice telling me to run. He paused. But there's nowhere left to run. He discharged his weapon into his temple on a live feed. Silence followed. Then a flicker on the comms. Transmission received. A human voice said neutral. Fear test successful. Proceeding. Council leadership tried to enforce a blackout, but nothing held. Every time they cut human signals, new ones emerged, embedded in data packets, buried in old footage, ghosted in Council AI's subconscious routines. In the dead zone around the Goro Belt, 24 planets experienced a synchronized blackout. When light returned, they found their planetary axes altered by microdegrees. No damage. No casualties. Just slightly changed. Enough to cause years of climate imbalance. Famine. Panic. And a single word carved into a canyon visible from orbit. Listen. General Dravari stood before the council, fists clenched. They don't want our surrender. They don't want our territory. They don't even want revenge. They want us to understand. Vrax and Kull laughed bitterly. Understand what? Solis IV answered, voice lower than before. What it's like to live beneath a boot you cannot see. To scream, and be unheard. To be studied, not spoken to. They've inverted the hierarchy. Vezaktar finally spoke. This was always their plan. Not extermination. Evolution. Not with power. With presence. They've become the shadow in every corridor. The voice behind every closed door. They learned to wear silence like armor. And now, they are shaping us in their image, not through force. Through fear. Across the far sectors, refugee colonies reported seeing visions, holograms that appeared and disappeared at random. Terran soldiers. Faces in the fog. Songs in the vents. No shots fired. But population drops followed every incident. Not because people were taken. Because people fled. And wherever they fled, the silence followed. The remaining members of the Galactic Council gathered in the subterranean crisis chamber beneath Veltora, the last secure moon. The war was never declared, but it had been won. Just not by them. No fleets stood ready. No reinforcements were expected. What remained were diplomats without states, generals without armies, and rulers without people. Overlord Vrax Kull slouched, his regal posture reduced to a twitching shell. He stared at the blank holopad on the table and whispered, Is there anything left? Solis IV, flickering from power disruptions, scanned the fading data stream. 3 functioning sectors remain. Civilian cohesion is non-recoverable. 81% of networked AIs now show Terran-coded anomalies. I am compromised. Gavari spoke up. Then speak while you still can. What are they waiting for? Vezaktar answered before the machine could. Nothing. They're done. The chamber dimmed as a comms node buzzed to life. A secure link bypassed every council encryption layer, routed through a system marked as defunct 5 centuries ago. The council braced for another fear transmission. But this time, there was no child's song, no looped laughter. Just a man. He appeared in full clarity. Not shadowed, not distorted. Human. Late 50s. Beard streaked with gray. Uniform not of war, but something older, simple, worn, proud. Behind him, stars drifted lazily across a black field. No weapons in sight. No threats projected. Just presence. He looked at them with eyes that didn't accuse. He just studied. You're not used to silence. The human began. You mistook it for absence. That was your first mistake. We were never absent. Just waiting. Listening. Recording. He folded his hands. You gave us categories. Deathworlders. Primitives. Threats. You studied our aggression like you were reading a manual. What you missed, what you never asked, was what we do when we stop talking. He leaned in, calm but sharp. We adapt. We evolve. We build quietly. You sent observers. We showed them chaos. You sent fleets. We showed them nothing. You pushed, and expected an explosion. But all you got was stillness. Dravari stood. Is this surrender? Negotiation? The man smiled faintly. This is farewell. The chamber went dead quiet. Surrender? The man repeated. You never heard US declare war. Why would we surrender? Vezaktar stepped forward. Then what is this? What happens now? The human considered the question. You survive. Some of you. Not as rulers. Not as conquerors. As listeners. You will rebuild, slowly, cautiously. Always wondering when the silence will return. When the Terran shadow will stretch back across your walls. You'll write new laws. Whisper our name with reverence or fear. But we won't be there. Because we've already moved on. Vraxenkul snapped, voice dry and bitter. You're leaving? After all this? The man nodded. We've outgrown this playground. You were the test. Not the enemy. He stood now, stepping aside so they could see what lay behind him. It wasn't a ship's bridge. It was a star map. But not of Council space. It showed dark sectors. Undiscovered voids. Unnamed systems. Untouched galaxies. And blinking lights, dozens of them. He spoke again. We learned everything we needed. Not from your wars, but from your fear. You taught us what power looks like when it fails. What silence feels like when it wins. Now we take that knowledge, and leave. Dravari's voice trembled. And if we come after you? The man's expression didn't change. You won't. Silence hung. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was truth. Vezaktar whispered. What will history say of this? The man's gaze turned distant. History is noise. Silence is legacy. The broadcast ended. The connection severed. The chamber lights flickered once, then stabilized. No message followed. No trace. Just quiet. The council sat frozen. Solis 4, its frame beginning to degrade, ran its final analysis. Probability of future Terran interference, negligible. Probability of cultural rewrite due to Terran's psychological imprint, total. Recommendation, preserve silence. Observe carefully. Do not speak unless invited. The remaining leaders dispersed. No orders were issued. No one dared speak. They would rebuild, yes. But never the same. Because across the galaxy, silence had become sacred. Systems once loud with ambition now echoed with restraint. Explorers charted sectors with reverence. Children were told bedtime stories not of monsters, but of humans who once disappeared, then returned only to leave again. In the shadows of their minds, the Council knew. The Terrans hadn't destroyed them. They'd replaced something far deeper. The belief that the galaxy belonged to anyone else. And they'd done it without ever firing the final shot.